What if the very person meant to protect your freedom failed you, and the only one brave enough to correct that failure stood alone in a courtroom built to silence the truth? This is the story of one judge. Judge Eleanor Hart refused to let justice die in silence. In a system where wrongful convictions often go unnoticed, Judge Hart did the unthinkable. She risked her career, her safety, and her reputation to expose a devastating lie buried within a case that was never supposed to be questioned again. But what she uncovered would change everything. Judge Eleanor Hart was no ordinary legal mind. For over 25 years, she built a reputation as the iron-willed, clear-eyed enforcer of fairness in the Southern District Circuit Court. Her courtroom was known not for leniency but for balance. She'd once said in a televised interview, "The scales of justice aren't meant to tilt toward power or furthery, meant to protect the truth, no matter how small or silent it seems." Lawyers feared her, innocents trusted her, and the system tolerated her. Judge Hart had never hesitated to call out misconduct. In 2010, she famously dismissed a high-profile drug case after learning that a key witness had been coerced into lying. She'd faced backlash, protests, even veiled threats, but she never wavered. Then came the case of Jamal Rivers, a 22-year-old black college student arrested for the 2017 murder of a wealthy tech CEO's son, Blake Dunham, in Atlanta, Georgia. The evidence? Circumstantial at best. A hoodie with Jamal's DNA found 2 blocks from the crime scene, a shaky eyewitness account from a neighbor who admitted to poor eyesight, a grainy surveillance clip that kind of looked like him. Yet, the prosecution painted a chilling picture. A young man with a grudge against privilege, who snapped one rainy October night. The media ate it up. So did the jury. Jamal was sentenced to life in prison without parole. But something didn't sit right with Judge Hart. As the trial unfolded, Judge Hart kept mental notes. The eyewitness, Mrs. Calloway, changed her testimony mid-trial from saying she only heard voices to clearly seeing Jamal's face. The timeline didn't add up. Jamal had clocked in at a gas station job 10 minutes after the murder was said to have occurred. Yet prosecutors claimed he could have made it. Even worse, the surveillance footage had been enhanced by a private firm hired by the victim's family, raising concerns about tampering. Judge Hart dug deeper after the verdict. Something compelled her gut feeling. Or maybe just the weight of seeing another young black man thrown into a system built against him. Then she found it. An internal memo from the DA's office, never shared with the defense, showing that a second suspect, a friend of the victim with a prior violent offense, had been questioned and released within 24 hours. His name had never been mentioned in court. Most judges would have moved on. The case was closed. The appeal window was narrowing. But Judge Hart couldn't sleep. She reopened the case under a rare post-conviction review. Her colleagues called it judicial overreach. Protesters lined the courthouse steps, angry that the wealthy Dunham family had to endure the case again. But the truth was louder. Her private investigation revealed even more damning facts. The DNA on the hoodie, partial and mixed with another unknown male's profile. Mrs. Calloway had been given anxiety medication before testifying, prescribed by a prosecution psychiatrist. The DA's office withheld multiple text messages between Blake and the real suspect, Ethan Voss, a childhood friend who had a history of violent outbursts and was in debt to Blake. Ethan had skipped town days after the murder. He resurfaced in Mexico under a fake name. In an explosive courtroom moment, Judge Hart overturned the conviction. Her voice, steady yet fiery, echoed through the packed chamber. The scales of justice must be recalibrated today. Mr. Rivers was not proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. In fact, this court finds the integrity of the process was deeply compromised. Jamal broke down in tears. His mother screamed out, collapsing to her knees. Court officers rushed to steady her. Outside, the crowd erupted, some in outrage, others in relief. Reporters swarmed. The DA refused comment, but Judge Hart didn't back down. She held a press conference that night, stating, "Justice must not fear scrutiny. If we're punishing the innocent to protect our pride, then this isn't a justice system, it's a factory of failure." The media went wild. Major outlets covered the reversal. Legal podcasts dissected the case for months. Civil rights organizations praised Hart for her bravery. The Dunham family, in pain, still refused to believe Jamal was innocent. But the court of law had spoken. The Georgia Attorney General opened an independent probe into the DA's office. 2 prosecutors resigned. 1 was disbarred for withholding evidence. Meanwhile, Jamal Rivers was free. He gave his first interview a month later. "I never gave up hope, and Judge Hart gave me my life back." The Hart Reform Bill passed in Georgia 6 months later. It mandated full evidence disclosure PI trial strict limits on private enhancement of video footage mental competency checks for eyewitness. Judge Hart's ruling set precedent. Nationwide, wrongful conviction cases began to reopen under similar scrutiny. Jamal Rivers became an activist, founding the Innocence Garden non-profit supporting wrongfully convicted youth. He and Judge Hart would later appear together at a TED Talk titled "Truth on Trial: When Justice Fights Back." Judge Hart never ran for re-election. When asked why, she replied, "I didn't want to wear the robe until I was buried in it. I wanted to take it off knowing I finally did something that mattered." So what happens when one person in power chooses truth over comfort? When a judge dares to pull the curtain back and say, "No more, justice is served," and the system, even if for a moment, becomes what it was meant to be. This isn't just a story about Jamal Rivers. It's about every silent courtroom where truth is buried for convenience, and every Judge Hart who refuses to let it stay that way.